Hello, everybody. I'm Ron Miscavige, and this is Life After Scientology. And we have your favorite guest back this week to continue on what we started on last week, which I'm really happy to get into because these are things that aren't talked about in much detail and maybe from the angles that we're taking it. So I welcome your participation in this and thank you for viewing. Get a little business out of the way. If you're not a subscriber, could you please subscribe and touch that bell so when we have videos, you'll be notified that there's a new video on. And if you'd like to help and participate in this show even more, you could become a patron. Just go to my website, therealronmiscavige.com. So with that business out of the way, and in the future, I will get a different microphone so I can start playing my horn again. I miss doing that, and I get a lot of nice comments on it. So I think you guys like it. So hopefully the next one I'll be able to toot a couple tunes for you. So Karen, welcome back, and here we go again.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
All right. So last week we talked about how they would get people hooked in, which was come on dissemination, and what the registrar or the salesperson for the church would do would try to find out what you, as can you hear that motorcycle outside?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Anyway, here I am in my home. All right, that's where I'm doing this. I'm not doing it from a studio. So the registrar would try to find what the person didn't want in his life and then promise him that they would get rid of what he didn't want, and also find out what he wanted and promise him that they would get him what he wanted. And this was a hook that would get people started on this. And I can tell you, there are many instances, probably thousands of instances, or even more, where people would be going after this carrot in front of their nose, and they would always be told, oh, you'll get that on your next step. That's how you're going to get it. Why don't you follow up on that, Karen? Because you, as being a trained auditor and a case supervisor, you have great insight into this stuff. And just let's get into it with that, okay?
Yes, in Scientology, it's called finding the ruin. The ruin is this obsessive thing that you go through life wanting to handle, desperately wanting. And it's usually something you want or something that is enforced on you as you go through life that you don't want. For example, a very bad marriage or a child that's doing heroin. So something huge that you really want to handle, your alcoholism, your sex
addiction. I hate to interrupt you, but could you lean forward a little bit? Because I think we could stand a little more of your volume. Is that possible?
Okay. Is that better?
Oh, yeah, that's better right off the bat. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no.
These are valuable things you're saying.
We have no studio. We're fishing, fumbling here to get it right. No worries. So Scientology salespeople want your money. The bottom line is they have to report back after an interview as to how much cash they got in the door. So the doctrines state to find out what the person wants or what they don't want and sell that Scientology will deliver that. Now, as a long-term case supervisor, I will tell you that people who have been in 20 years say, well, I got this, I got that, but I'm still wanting to handle what I came into Scientology 20 years ago to handle. So the truth of the matter is that very, very rarely does Scientology actually deliver that promise of handling to give you what you want. Now let me move to the flip side, which is after you've been in and had a little this and that, got the camaraderie of having a group that you belong to. There's a spirit of having a community and going to events together, sharing. Now Scientology thrusts on you that which you don't want, but they enforce it. You know, we can divert and talk about Hubbard. Hubbard had a big thing on smells and odors. So because he didn't like it, he ordered every single Sea Org member to not have any shampoo, deodorant, or soap that had any fragrance. Do you remember that?
Listen, I'll tell you something. At the international base, there was a series of washers and that were set up that his clothes would be sent in, and they would wash these clothes
7 to 8 times.
infinitum.
Every shirt of L. Ron Hubbard had to be washed, cycled through 8 times.
There you go.
Right. Now, that was his phobia on bacteria and germs and odors. Imagine every shirt that you wear has to be laundered consecutively 8 times before he would wear that shirt again. And the messengers and his personal household staff did all that. But we're looking at what's imposed on you, because the trick to get you in is, oh, we're going to give you what you want. Whatever you want, whatever baggage you want to get rid of, we are going to handle that. That's a complete lie. 90% of the population in Scientology are trying to handle what they came into Scientology to handle 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. And now they're told, handle your BTs and clusters, because they're the ones.
I know.
Handle your attached spirits. That's supposed to solve what you came into Scientology to handle. You can audit your attached spirits, your BTs and clusters till the cows come home. It's never going to handle what you want to handle. I'll tell you that straight up. I'm very trained on all of that. Now, we started off saying how what you don't want is forced on you. And I gave an example, like you're not allowed to come into an org smelling of any kind of perfume, or you can be sent to ethics because your hair smells of a shampoo.
I know.
That has a fragrance. That's how, you know. My own son, most people know he died at 27 years old because of Scientology's toxic policy of disconnection. I purchased his car insurance. As a Sea Org member, it's hard to come up with the amount of money you need in California.
I know.
The cult cut it off, made him phone me up and say, Mom, you're not allowed to pay for my car insurance because it's considered external influence.
Right.
And he refunded me, my own son, helping him out. He refunded me car insurance money. Now, this is an example of the cult ordering and enforcing what they want, but not what you want. And the rest of your years in Scientology will be receiving enforced orders. How about attending all these events, Ron? That's enforced.
Of course it is. And if you don't go to an event, you're going to report to ethics.
Yeah. Speak up, Ron. Your voice is getting softer as we go.
Okay.
Speak up.
Well, okay.
Speak up with resonance. How about sleep deprivation? You want to sleep, and the cult is going to order. Didn't you go as a member of the band sometimes, like setting it all up all night without sleep? Describe one of those incidents.
Karen, I will tell you something. I worked with the guy, his name is Peter. I don't want to bring up his last name. Of course, I'm sure a lot of people would know who it was.
Peter Schluss. He's well known.
Peter Schluss, that's right. We worked on a video for St. Hill, England, and we were up for 84 hours straight to produce the soundtrack in that video. Now, I don't mean that we were up and every once in a while we get 2 or 3 hours sleep. I mean we were up and and working for 84 hours straight. And at the end of the 84th hour, we finished it. And the mindset that we were in is that we were proud to have done that. Now, just imagine how your mind can be brainwashed and programmed for you to think, for you to not get sleep like the North Koreans used to do with prisoners to torture them, sleep deprivation, that you're programmed to thinking that you did a marvelous thing and you helped the movement to help clear the planet, which is hogwash, all right?
Yeah.
But we did that. That was one time. There was many other times we were up overnight and we had to stay on post. And, you know, if you doped off or anything, you were an ethics particle.
This is what I'm trying to give examples of. Although the pretense when you walk in the door is we're going to give you what you want, the actuality is we're going to enforce on you what the hierarchy of management want. To hell with what you want. To hell with very basic needs like sleep. The CIA described sleep deprivation as torture, a kind of torture. In fact, it's used for it's used when they find Al Qaeda and ISIS and things. They got to get information. They use sleep deprivation as a kind of to get the guy so weakened in the mind that he will talk and give them data. So it's a kind of torture. I'm going to throw in this little story of Jenny DeVocht, Jenny Linson.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny Linson is known as a horrific bully, tyrannical. She ran that famous, she descended in 1996 in a mission in the Mission from Hell. It was also dubbed the Masturbation Mission. She arrived with some stormtroopers, these guys in their lanyards and fake Sea Org uniform, impersonating ISIS thugs. And she called musters, got together everyone, and read out private confessions of masturbation while the person who had confessed that stood facing the entire audience in Los Angeles. She called that person on the stage, and then she read out every single line of what they did, what they fantasized, to humiliate the person. Now, Jenny was never like that in early days. People remember her as a sweetheart before she turned into this monster. Absolute sweetheart. And you know what David Miscavige did?
Go on.
He did not let her sleep for 7 days. For 7 days, she was forced to work with no sleep. At the end of 7 days, she was put in the hole, the double wide trailers that are married together. She's put in the CMO conference room, and she was allowed to sleep. And the rest of CMO Int had to stand and watch her till she woke up. So for 48 hours, people were standing without sleep, watching Jenny Linson. She passed out for 48 hours after being up for 7 days. What the hell is this? What the heck? Go ahead, Ron.
It's a madhouse. Could you imagine that Jenny got in a state of mind thinking that bringing a person up in front of a crowd and humiliating them because of reading out how they masturbated, that was going to somehow reform that person and he's going to perform his duties better and be a better Sea Org member? What kind of state of mind must she have been in to think that was going to be an effective way in bringing about a desired result that would help the person be better? It's hard to fathom. it's really hard to fathom that you can get in that state of mind. But I'm going to tell you, there's little things that rice and beans. Here's another one. My wife sometimes would be on rice and beans for months.
Yeah.
She worked in the marketing area. And because they didn't do something, maybe she'd be on rice and beans for 3 months. I was sitting down at a meal with her, and she was eating rice and beans, and I was going to take a piece of meat and put it on her plate to give her some nourishment. And sitting across from me is a guy named Thomas Burke, who said, if you give her that meat, I'm going to write a knowledge report. I'm going to write a knowledge report on you, and you're going to have to go to ethics. What state of mind could he be in to want to do that to me, and me just trying to give my wife a little bit of meat protein? This stuff goes on. We're not making this up. This is something that we've seen, we've experienced.
I hope a lot of people are warned by watching all these inside stories of what really goes on. This is one flew over the cuckoo's nest. This kind of, and there's a loophole in the law where once you've got religious status, you're allowed to do religious discipline, they call it. No business. That's why they have to lose their tax exemption. They have to. It's the United States government permitting this by giving them tax exemption. This is the permissiveness. Can you imagine if you worked for IBM or Google or whatever, and you had to work for 7 days without sleep? No business. You would be sued. You would lose.
If you holler
but
at
they get away with it because it's religion.
If you were to holler at a person in today's society, is that macro aggression or microaggression, something like that, the word is. So it's totally the opposite. But with the Church of Scientology, I can tell you, so far, there's not one politician in the entire government who's willing to say, hang on a second, these guys are not a religion. This is a company doing business, making money, pretending they're a religion.
Yes, complete pretense.
You got to take away the tax exemption.
How religious is it to shame and humiliate and degrade their own staff by pretending that what they confessed to was priest penitent and then reading it out to 500 people to mock them? Now, Jenny had been in about 15, 20 years by the time she morphed into this. Apparently, she was pretty decent in early days before she got into the Scientology mindset. Her father, Art Linson, is a director in Hollywood, affluent, making money.
Oh, yeah.
And Jenny chooses to stay in this lunatic fringe place. There's a very famous video of Jenny attacking Marty Rathburn at LAX.
Right.
And if you look at her, oh my goodness, you see the deterioration of this young pretty girl who was up for 7 days. Something really went on in her head after being up 7 days, because she morphed into a monster, really.
Well, I'll tell you,
She's
is a mechanism.
certifiably insane right now. Mm-hmm.
There's a mechanism here, and we both know it. If something is done to you by somebody who has authority over you, you will go into that.
You copy that identity.
You will go into that person's personality to gain the favor of that person. And I think this is what has happened to literally tons of people who, as long as they stay in, the longer they stay in, the more they adopt this, what we would call a winning valence. A valence is simply a personality. That's the personality traits of a person. And I think this is what happens to a lot of people, because they have to survive in this, so they feel it's the survival thing to do. You think you can be a recalcitrant, no, speaking up against things being done to you. You can't do it. It's not possible.
We got into some of these anecdotes only to explain that the Scientology's pitch to get your money is, we're going to handle what you want.
Yeah.
It's a total lie. Total lie. As a case supervisor of years, people were still complaining. I've had auditing for 11 years, 12 years. I still have what I came into Scientology to handle. And many people who exit after 30, 40 years realize that the one thing they came into Scientology, Chuck Beatty talks about it a lot. He came in because he thought you could have these transformational moments of leaving your body, and the one thing he wanted was what we loosely call in the jargon exteriorization.
Right.
But the point is that he did 35 years and 7 years in the RPF, and didn't come close to anything like that. Anyway, so that's an original lie, and we wanted to take time to explain. Not only does the cult give you a pitch that's a complete lie, that we're going to handle what you want to handle, but they then force and push on you that which you don't want.
Yep.
And I think the reason the cult is hemorrhaging badly of getting new members, and why those big new ideologues they purchase in real estate acquisition are empty, is because people leave and find out they're really not getting what they paid for. They're not getting what they want. But they are being ordered and screamed at to be on court. What they don't want is to give up 2.5 hours a day of their life to be on course. And that is forced on them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of forcing what you don't want and not delivering what you want. That sums it up in a sentence, right?
Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to get into a bit, if you'd like. And that's some of the things that L. Ron Hubbard said that turned out to be complete falsehoods. Like he said that he was blinded and crippled during the Second World War, and he brought himself back to complete health by using these principles that he so-called discovered. And that turned out to be not true. And I'm very gracious when I just say not true. Why don't we get into that a little bit and tell exactly what happened, Karen?
Ron, there are investigators, researchers, authors, journalists that really look into some of these claims. I don't think in the 70s, the cult or the Guardian's office really realized how much research could be done once the internet, no one could predict the internet in the 70s, to really look and see that some of these extraordinary claims were accurate. And so several researchers, Chris Owen comes to mind, Larry Wright, they went into military records. These are all archived and available. There is not one substantiated record that Hubbard was ever blinded, or that he had anything that really was serious to do with his eyesight. Never happened. There's no document on that. Crippled, that would be in military records. He was never crippled. He spent a little span of time at Oak Knoll Naval Hospital, a hospital which doesn't exist. The whole thing got detonated and blown up in Oakland, Northern California. I don't know why it was some Army base. The hospital doesn't exist, but Army records do exist, and they always exist.
Mm-hmm.
He was never crippled. After a little stint there in the hospital, he went he went to a sort of a communal hippie type, pretty brave in those days, men and women living together with kind of free sex in Pasadena, in a large home owned by Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons was a brilliant scientist and a lot of rocket science, building a rocket in such a way that it just takes off outside the parameters of gravity. He was the source of inventing that kind of rocket fuel that did that.
Right.
So he had quite a scientific mind. And he had this house, and he rented out all these rooms to men and women. And L. Ron Hubbard went straight from recovering what he says was his crippledness and blindness to move into this free love home in Pasadena. And eventually he ran off with Jack Parsons' girlfriend, Sarah, who he sort of married, but he wasn't divorced from his first wife was she in Washington?
Yeah, she was in Washington.
She was in Washington with 2 children of his, and they were still married, Polly. And then he had some kind of marriage to Sarah, which would have been a bigamist marriage. So there was no blindness, there was no crippledness. Hubbard was having a whale of a time with all this free love, free sex in Jack Parsons' house, which ended in him running off with Sarah. And then they had a child together.
Well, what was he doing at Jack Parsons' house in regard to this sex magic? Was that what it was called? I think Nibs.
Oh, there was this bizarre story of trying to create a moon child. And I'm really a bit fuzzy on the details of that, but Aleister Crowley sneered and thought this was just 2 louts in Pasadena. There was something to do with some ritual. Hubbard was fascinated with magic with a K at the end, spelled not magic like magic done in Las Vegas with magicians, but magic which was ritualistic, calling up spirits who were no longer inhabiting human bodies. And if Hubbard, there was sperm used and rituals sung, and some baby was supposed to be born. It was just it's hard to believe that Hubbard was involved in it. But I want to tell you the lie. When investigators, journalists, researchers dug up all this, Scientology had to explain what on earth was Hubbard doing in ritualistic magic with Jack Parsons out in the desert with male sperm to create a baby. It was just so off the charts. So Scientology concocted this story, which, see, they lie and they get into trouble, and they lie and they get into more trouble, that he was on a Navy assignment, that the Navy was trying to break up a black magic ring. Oh, what?
Oh, boy.
First of all, the Navy doesn't. This would be an FBI matter. If at all, if this were some black magic causing harmful, the jurisdiction would have been the FBI, not the Navy. What is the Navy?
They don't have anything to do with
the United
things
States
like that.
with ships. Why on earth would Hubbard, who had long since departed the Navy, after writing letters asking for psychiatric help for his condition, why would the Navy then recruit him? Jesus.
Well, he actually wrote in and got some type of pension because of a disability.
Speak up, Rob.
that
Your
he claimed
voice
he
is
had.
slow. Speak up. You got to talk louder.
Okay, so he wrote to the Navy, and they did give him some money that he collected on because he said he had this disability. So if he cured himself with all of his Scientology and dynamics techniques, would he then ask for a pension because he was still crippled? I don't think so.
Well, he did get this pension. Yeah, he did get this pension for serving in the Navy, I think all the way right through till he died. When people wanted to reach him, because he moved and moved and moved, you think, how would they find his address? He always used the Explorers Club in New York. So if you had a check to send him, write to L. Ron Hubbard, care of Explorers Club.
Right. And
that's where his mail went. Mm-hmm.
I would like to get into that, and I would also like to get into origins of Scientology, because there's some interesting things about this psychiatrist who had something to do with how Scientology was developed. We don't have the time to do that right now, Karen.
Oh, that'll be a good show. Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl, that's right.
Viktor Frankl wrote huge papers before L. Ron Hubbard said, there is mind, body, spirit. Viktor Frankl's research and all his papers, 20, 30 years, was mind, body, spirit.
Good. And let's get into this on the next program.
Yeah.
Because
yeah, sounds good.
I think we've covered what we wanted to cover. And hopefully I'll have a microphone fixed so you can hear me a little better.
Let me just finish off with saying that Tommy Davis, who replaced Mike Rinder as spokesman for a couple of years, made a big boo-boo. And he said, I think this got him fired and removed. He said, if L. Ron Hubbard was not blinded and crippled, then all of Dianetics, which is based on this, is a fabrication and a lie. I mean, it's a weird thing.
Boy, he stuck both feet in his mouth with that statement.
He did. What a weird thing to say, because Hubbard was never blinded and he was never crippled. He just wasn't, right?
Yeah.
Now, so for Tommy Davis to then say, well, all of Dianetics then is structured on a lie, if he wasn't, because you see, he was being challenged. He's being challenged by documentation. This is nonsense. Yeah. Show one document from the Navy that he got blind. Show one document that he got, So anyway, there you go.
Let's get into Viktor Frankl. I'm anxious to do that program.
Oh, what a wonderful man. Yeah. A psychiatrist.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And there's some other things about Scientology and its formation and information, because I personally have read many books of philosophers in the late 19th and early 20th century. And boy, there's a lot of things in there that look like L. Ron Hubbard just cut and pasted, but he put a different agenda to it than these guys were doing. They were just doing it to give information to people. He incorporated it into Scientology, but with a little twist. Let's get into that in the next program, okay?
It's also interesting how Dianetics then morphed into Scientology to get a religious angle on it.
Right? Oh, yeah.
And
okay, so let's not get into it right now. Okay. We're on time. And, I'd like to get this voice thing.
Usually you make me laugh. You didn't make me laugh.
What's that?
You usually make me laugh. You make me laugh. You say something that makes me absolutely laugh. You didn't make me laugh.
Oh, I didn't?
No, I didn't laugh. That's okay, Rob. Next time I'll double laugh.
I'll think of a great joke for you the next time to kick it off. Anyway, for right now, we're going to pull the plug. And I hope you were enlightened by this program. Please, if you would like to subscribe to this so you can continually see these come, and hit the bell. I think you have to do that so when we have the next show, you'll be notified. And you can go to my website and help. You could become a Patreon or get other people to start watching this. I'd like to get a lot more subscribers and a lot more people getting enlightened by this. So for Karen de la Carriere and me, Ron Miscavige, I will see you on the next program.
It never hurts to debunk lies. Never. Much of this has been covered previously on the internet, Chris Shelton, Tony Ortega, but debunking outright lies is helpful.
Yeah.
You've got to get truth. You've got to wash away lies.
Yep.
All right, sweetheart Ron. Big hug to you. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yep. And bye-bye from me, Ron. I'm Ron Miscavige. This has been Life After Scientology. I'll see you on the next program, and hopefully it's with Karen, because I want to continue into what we got in toward the end here. Okay, bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.